Hello there. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, from wherever you are watching around the world. And welcome to Derby Day FC, where we talk about football's greatest rivalries. Today, we'll be talking about the rivalry between Cameroon and the Ivory Coast. As you may be aware, the African Cup of Nations is currently taking place in Morocco. It started on the 21st, Sunday 21st, and there have been some outstanding games already. Some great goals have been scored. And so if you have a chance, I would encourage you to check out the currently ongoing African Cup of Nations and even check out some videos on YouTube. I'm sure you would enjoy some of the goals that have been scored already. Now, today we'll be talking about the rivalry between Cameroon and the Ivory Coast, like I mentioned. And I felt that with the African Cup of Nations currently ongoing, what better way for us to start talking about our rivalries than to dive into the African Cup of Nations, notably knowing that the game or one of the features that are upcoming is between the Ivory Coast and Cameroon on the 28th of December. I'm already excited. This is going to be a good game. Now, we know that there are some rivalries that are already very popular in Africa, notably the rivalry between Egypt and Algeria, the famous Jollof rivalry between Nigeria and Ghana, Tunisia versus Morocco, and Zambia versus Zimbabwe. So those are a few, but like I mentioned, with the African Cup of Nations now ongoing, what better way for us to start than starting with one that we already have pinned or scheduled for the 28th. Now, in today's video, we're going to go through a few things to talk about this rivalry. First, we will look at the history of this rivalry. We'll touch on the head-to-head encounters. We'll look at some memorable moments, visits of memory moments, and then we'll talk about the significance of this rivalry. Let's jump right into it. So, the history of this rivalry. So, it's it's a rivalry that dates back, featuring heavily on African competitions, notably the African Cup of Nations, but as well World Cup qualifiers involving both nations. And usually there's a lot of this. How can I put this? The stakes are high, especially when it comes to World Cup qualifiers. And, both countries usually meet towards the elimination rounds of the African Cup of Nations competition. So, most recently in the African Cup of not the African Cup, in the World Cup qualifiers, I can remember in 2005 when Cameroon was playing to qualify for the World Cup, and we were eliminated by the Ivory Coast. Um, those are the most recent memories that I had of this rivalry really brewing in and really developing. And that led into other African Cup of Nations games where we played against the Ivory Coast, and this feeling of you guys knocked us out of the World Cup, and now we're going to revenge, and we want to knock you out as well. I sense that it's been building from that. And then you also have the passionate fans. There's a lot of passion that runs between both nations normally when it comes to Cameroon. to Cameroon and the Ivory Coast. And when you also look at the fact that both nations produce two of what many will say arguably the biggest football legends in Africa. I know my Nigerian brothers will come for me at some point, my Nigerian brothers and sisters, about African legends, but right now it's Cameroon and Ivory Coast. We'll have another opportunity to talk about other rivalries. But when I talk about legends, I'm referring to Drogba and Eto, who have huge fan bases in both countries. And so this kind of has also built up, that rivalry between both nations. And then there is the other aspect to it, which I think it's much more social. I'll put it that way because both countries are very similar. Although they are far apart from each other. Cameroon is much more centrally west located in Africa. Well, not centrally west, centrally located in Africa, and the Ivory Coast is west of Africa, separated by a few countries. There are a few things that still tie these countries together that makes it feel like they are neighbors or they are brothers. One being the language, both countries speak French. Cameroon, of course, is bilingual, French and English. And so, yes, that social aspect of, identity of a lot of things that are similar to both countries has also, made it a lot of people to refer to this as a sibling rivalry. And you know how sibling rivalries can be. And so I would say those are the key things that over the past few years have really built up this rivalry, and has made it to what it is today. The last thing that I will touch on is on the African Cup of Nations itself being hosting. So Cameroon hosted in 2021 and the Ivory Coast hosted in 2023, I believe. And so when Cameroon hosted, Cameroon said they were going to take the African Cup of Nations. Unfortunately, that did not happen. But when the Ivory Coast hosted, they were able to take it. And when they took it, they told, there was all this, talk on social media saying, Cameroonians, this is how you do it. And to be honest, to be fair, the Ivorians did a great job hosting the African Cup of Nations. So that's it. That's where we are. That I can say as far as rivalry is concerned. And it has grown, and I think that this is a rivalry that we will see continue to grow over the years. Um, and so, having said that, let's visit a few head-to-head encounters. So the first ever game between the Ivory Coast and Cameroon was played in 1970, and it was an African Cup of Nations game, and Cameroon won 3 goals to 2. I don't have much of details about that. Maybe probably in another video we could talk about, we could revisit some of these games just to see if there are footage, if there's any footage on this game. But that would be interesting. So both teams have played a total of 19 games. So this includes qualification games, friendly games, as well as African Cup of Nations games as well. And Cameroon currently holds the edge in wins, with 9 wins, and the Ivory Coast 8, and 2 draws. So you see, the number of draws are really small, and the margin between both teams is really just one game. So the game on the 28th, it's really going to be an interesting one. It's really going to be fierce, and really looking forward to it. Like I mentioned, one of the most recent games was in 2021, where Cameroon edged the Ivory Coast by winning 1-0 in Cameroon to qualify for the World Cup. So I think it's safe to say we got them back for what happened to us a while back. So let's visit a few memorial moments between both countries. Starting in 2006 in AFCON, where the Ivory Coast eliminated Cameroon in the quarterfinals. Oh, that hurt. In 2015, the Ivory Coast beat Cameroon again in the group stage. Wow. In 2022, in the qualifiers, a close contest with Ivory Coast winning. Oh, yes, this is what I was making reference to. So the Ivory Coast beat us at home. I mean, Abidjan, 2 goals to 1. But we then, got them back 1 goal to 0, where we then qualified to go to the competition. I think I rectified that. And then, yeah, the clash that we're looking forward to on the 28th, that should be mouth watering. So, to round up the video, what does this mean? Significance of this? I mean, like I mentioned, it's just a rivalry that has grown over the years, with two countries who want to push themselves to excel, and I think this has really elevated the level of African football. And I think just the general idea around what it means, what African football means. I talked about hosting, just pushing each other to have a good, well organized competition, showcasing the world what Africa has to present. And then yeah, I've gone through I cannot believe I've gone through the video without saying what the mascot of each team is. For Cameroon were the lions, and for Ivory Coast the elephants. So it's a way to celebrate, African football as well. I would like to touch on a few legends from both sides, from both countries, football legends. I mean, earlier I mentioned Didier Drogba, who was just phenomenal, representing his country and on the world stage, as well as Samuel Eto'o. Both are respected globally. But then also talking about the people who paved the way before them, right? Roger Milla, who put, gave Africa belief on the world stage. For Ivory Coast, you also have Ibrahima Bakayoko, who was a trailblazer for the national side as well. We can talk about Yaya Toure, control, authority, just class. Yeah, playing at the biggest clubs on the biggest stages, just being an absolute just top notch. I don't think there's a better way to say it. And then Rigobert's song as well. Just what it means to be a leader, and sacrifice. Talking about sacrifice, how about Kolo Toure? So those are some, legends, from both countries. I don't think that list is exhaustive as at all. You can talk about Jevino, you can talk about Patrick Mboma, you can talk about, the list goes on and on. But I want to just round up talking about referencing a video that I listened to Alexander Song, who, it's a former Cameroonian player, played for Barcelona, for Arsenal, just talking about this rivalry as well and what it meant to the team. You could just sense from him that, it was so important before the game, during the game, like how the team will put themselves into that mindset of, everything or nothing. And us as the fans, we could really see this translate into a wonderful game, a terrific game. So That's it. That's my take on this huge rivalry, our first, and many more to come. I hope you enjoyed it. We would only get better. So let me know what you think about this. Leave a comment and share this within your network. Thank you very much, and catch you on the next one. Bye bye.